Hi, I'm a Possum and I find garbage. Today's garbage is Mufasa, the Lion King. The prequel to The Lion King, the remake from 2019, not the original from 1994. Okay, so I only just recently watched The Lion King remake and never bothered to review it because there's just not that much I could say about it that wouldn't just be repeating what Do Our Movies Suck said about it. But to give my quick thoughts on it, it's essentially the same story, just executed in a way that shows little understanding of just about everything that made the original good. There's not a single change that improved anything, and every change only serves to detract. They made the remake a lot longer by unnecessarily drawing everything out in a way that lessens the impact. As an example, at the beginning of the original, we see a mouse sniffing around when it's suddenly slammed down upon by Scar's massive paw, and we immediately get a sense of the relationship between predator and prey and how dangerous this guy is to those who he sees as lesser than him. The remake misses the point entirely and instead takes this opportunity to show off their super realistic CGI by showing the mouse scurrying around a detailed animated environment. And that's another thing, it's not a live action remake because it's 100% CGI. Just because they animated it to look real, that doesn't alter the fact that it's animated. As an aside, can we stop calling things live action when most of what we see on screen is animated? People think of Avatar as a live action movie even though like 90% of it is CGI. It has more animation than Who Framed Roger Rabbit. Anyway, the reason I never watched the remake until now is I'm philosophically opposed to it. The very notion of remaking an animated classic in live action, or in this case CGI made to look like live action, is an insult to animation as an art form. Because the implication is that animation can be improved upon by making it more realistic to the point that it no longer resembles animation, which completely defeats the purpose. I mean, it looks more realistic, yes, but does it look better? Was The Lion King improved by completely removing all of the humanized facial expressions and robbing all the big dramatic moments of the emotional weight? I bet if I showed you any random screenshot of Simba from the remake without any context, you would have no idea what he's feeling in any of them. The word animate means to bring to life. In fact, it shares the same etymological root as the word animal. But does the remake look more alive than the original? It looks more realistic, yes, but does it look more alive in anything other than the most cold and clinical sense of the word? And before anyone dismisses my argument as nostalgia, look at the bright and colorful original, which clearly had some passion put into it, and then look at the sterile computer remake and tell me which one you think kids would rather watch. But the remake wasn't made for kids, now was it? No, it was made for emotionally stunted adults. The kind who go to Disney World and buy a $5,000 Star Wars cocktail, just like every live-action or pseudo-live-action Disney remake. Those of you who support these movies with your money and who defend them, you're the ones who are being suckered in by nostalgia. You're the ones who make it profitable for Disney to repackage and resell you inferior versions of what you've already seen.
Pathetic.
And that brings us to Mufasa, the Lion King, the prequel that became inevitable due to the disgusting fact that the Lion King remake became the highest grossing animated film ever at the time, thanks to people who have no standards or regard for artistic integrity. Alright, let me just get the positives out of the way. The characters actually emote with their faces in this one. One of the big complaints about the remake is that the characters had no facial expressions because, for whatever reason, Jon Favreau insisted on making the movie about talking animals as realistic as possible, and it turns out that realistic animals don't have human expressions, which just made everything look really awkward. Mufasa doesn't have that problem. The animals actually look like they're feeling what the movie says they are, so that's an improvement. There's also a lot more color in the movie. The remake tried to be as realistic as possible, and I guess that means everything had to be ugly shades of gray and brown. And anytime a song started, they couldn't do anything creative because that wouldn't be realistic, so the characters would just kind of wander around while singing. They got rid of the goose stepping during the Be Prepared sequence because we can't evoke fascist imagery during a song about the bad guy's evil plans because that might offend the imaginary modern audience. So they replaced it with Scar just kind of walking around. In Mufasa, the songs actually have visuals to go with them, or at least the first one does. Next, there's that one scene in the trailer where Mufasa and this other character, Taka, fall off a cliff into a river and Taka says, "I did it, I saved us." Then one of the evil white lions jumps into the water behind them, and Mufasa says, "You were saying?" And we were all afraid it would have that terrible Joss Whedon dialogue that infests the Marvel movies. You know what I mean, that was awkward, he's right behind me, isn't he, dialogue. There's very little of that in this movie. What there is a lot of, though, is this obnoxious riffing by Timon and Pumbaa. So, the movie has this completely unnecessary framing device where Rafiki tells Mufasa's origin story to Simba's daughter Kiara, and the entire rest of the movie is just flashbacks, and it adds nothing to the movie. I'm convinced the only reason this framing device exists was so they could shoehorn Timon and Pumbaa into the movie, because they have nothing to do with Mufasa's origin, and they never even met him. So the movie will periodically come to a dead stop to throw in a scene of Timon and Pumbaa being horrifically annoying and unfunny, making stupid fourth wall breaking jokes because Disney seems to have an aversion to sincerity. And I'm guessing all their dialogue was improvised because it has that same unstructured and random rambling quality as the dialogue in Ghostbusters 2016. And they never shut up. I mean, every single second that Timon and Pumbaa are on screen, they're just yammering about stupid, irrelevant nonsense. They're like Claptrap in the Borderlands movie, and I can't stress how unfunny and cringy they are. And to make it worse, they seem to always pop up after something serious and dramatic happens. It's like, oh no, I've been separated from my parents and I'll probably never see them again. I remember the Lion King Broadway show, Hakuna Matata, what a wonderful phrase. They were not at all needed in this movie. They only served to drag it down, and it would have been better if all the scenes were cut. I would go so far as to say that even if everything else in the movie were perfect, Timon and Pumbaa ruin it. Imagine if you were watching a movie, but then every 15 minutes or so, some kid just came in, took the remote, paused it, and they just started poking you in the face with a broom handle for 2 minutes before letting you continue. That's what it's like. They make the movie almost unwatchable. Speaking of unwatchable, there was something off about the animation. Something about how everything moved, the fact that the camera never stops moving like it's a Michael Bay movie, I don't know, it just had this really annoying, unnatural quality to it that's hard to describe. I felt like I was watching Pinocchio, a true story, but with hyper-realistic CGI animals. It's off-putting, and it probably wouldn't have been so bad if they went for a more cartoony art style. And the songs suck, which seems to be a running theme with Disney for the past few years. Once again, I can't remember any of the melodies after having just seen the movie, but what I do remember is one of the songs rhymes the word brother with itself over and over, and it's like the worst possible rhythm because they stretch out the last syllable. It's like, something something brother, something something brother, and then there's the villain song where the repeated phrase is bye bye. I could swear I remember one of the verses being, I'm gonna make you go bye-bye. And he says it over and over. There's this big, scary white lion who's supposed to be intimidating, and they have him saying bye-bye. The movie is just full of bizarre decisions like that. There's this weird thing in the movie where apparently Mufasa has the power to just sense things as if by magic. Like he can just sense a herd of gazelles from half a day away by smelling them and hearing how the wind blows through their horns, so he knows they're gazelles and not antelopes. And he could do this because he was raised by lionesses. See, early in the movie, Mufasa gets separated from his family as a cub and gets found by a new pride, and their king doesn't like him, so he forces them to live with the females, who teach him how to hunt and stuff. The movie's logic is that because the females of a lion pride do all the hunting while the males just lay around all day, that means the females are vastly more competent and have magical abilities that can be taught. Now, it's true that female lions do all the hunting for the pride in real life, but that doesn't mean the males are useless freeloaders. There's one big dominant male who protects the pride, so he doesn't do anything and just saves his energy for when the need to fight arises, which in the wild happens pretty frequently. But when a male cub reaches the age where he becomes a potential threat to the dominant male kicks him out, and then that male has to hunt for his own food and survive in the unforgiving wilderness until he finds a new pride. So obviously any male who lives long enough to become the king of his own pride is perfectly capable of hunting if he has to. But this movie felt the need to shove in this girl power crap where it's revealed that the thing that made Mufasa such a great king is that he learned a bunch of magical powers from the females. Like, Disney can't just tell a story about Mufasa and how he became a king. They have to do the whole modern audiences thing and give his credit to a female character. And it doesn't even make sense because he teams up with Sarabi at one point. You know, the lioness who would later become Simba's mother in the original movie. And she apparently doesn't have the same abilities, or at least never uses them to the same degree that Mufasa does. So I guess these are just magical powers known only to the lionesses of this particular pride, like the ability to hear and smell things has to be learned. So in the original Lion King, Scar resents his brother Mufasa because he's the king and has all the power and Scar has to live in his shadow. And this movie seems to sort of set that up at first because Mufasa is shown to be the brave and competent one while Taka, who would later take on the name Scar, is cowardly and doesn't know how to talk to chicks. But he's never shown to be jealous of Mufasa until near the end when he realizes Sarabi loves Mufasa and not him. Up until then, Taka's always like, wow Mufasa, you're so cool. I wish I could be more like you because you're so awesome. I'm glad we're like brothers because you're just such a cool guy and I suck. So all it took to turn Taka against Mufasa was a girl coming between them. A tale as old as time, I guess. So while Taka betrayed Mufasa for practically no reason, the climax of the movie has Mufasa showing up in the magical promised land by convincing all of the animals who have no idea who he is to organize into an army and fight the evil white lions. Like, he just gets up on a rock, not the famous Pride Rock, just a rock, and gives a big speech, and all the animals are like, this guy we just met is right, let's band together and fight and be loyal to him and make him our king afterward. It's like a 9th grader wrote it. But then, during the climactic battle, just out of nowhere, an earthquake starts and a big hill cracks in half and forms Pride Rock. Really? Do we really need to see the origin of Pride Rock, of all things? Like, it couldn't just be a rock that was always just there. We had to see how it formed 5 minutes after Mufasa showed up. Remember that moment in the remake when Rafiki picked up a stick and he was like, hello, old friend, and the music swelled and got all nostalgic? Like the stick meant something, it wasn't just a thing he used to walk around? Well, we get the origin of that stick, too. It was just a branch he held onto while clinging to a tree while elephants stampeded beneath him. It's not some magical staff that joined him on hundreds of adventures, it's just a stick he found. It's not even a good stick, it's an ugly stick, like the kind your mom was hit with. Blow me. Alright, that's all I have to say about Mufasa, the Lion King. Here's a challenge for my audience. In the comments, lie about something. Lie about your favorite Disney product or something, I don't know. And don't forget to subscribe if you're not already, check my channel for videos you may have missed, send me your fan art, and support me on Patreon. The links are in the pinned comment. Bye.